Welcome to Shaped by Faith with your host, Theresa Rowe. To find out more about Shaped by Faith and Theresa Rowe, please visit shapedbyfaith.com or visit the YouTube channel, Facebook, or Instagram. And now, here is Theresa Rowe.
Welcome to Shaped by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. I'm your host, Theresa Rowe. I have a very special guest on Shaped by Faith today. Her name is Jade Hagan, and her business is called Jadey Cakes. It's a home bakery that offers dietary restrictions and friendly desserts to the Owensboro area. And Jadey Cakes specializes in gluten and dairy-free cakes, cupcakes, and cookies. And Jade, I'm getting hungry just thinking about all of it. But welcome to Shaped by Faith. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be on. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I love to interview local people that are doing the business that God has placed on their hearts to do. So whether you're in Owensboro or you're in Atlanta or you're in Nashville or California, it's really not going to matter because this is all relative. So everyone will be able to relate to what you're doing. So let's start by hearing just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what your background is.
I am from Owensboro, born and raised in Owensboro. I'm 22. I'm like, what do I say about myself? I went to OCTC and WKU for college, and now I'm a part-time teacher, part-time baker. So
That's
that's
awesome.
pretty much me.
So were you raised in a Christ-centered environment, or what was that like growing up? Did you go to church a lot or not, or what was that like?
Yeah, I was raised in a very Christ-centered environment. I went to a private Christian school growing up, Heritage Christian School. And yeah, as I got older, it kind of took me exploring my faith, obviously, as it does for everybody, exploring my faith for myself and really figuring out what I believe. But yes, I was raised in a very Christ-centered environment. I had a very good and Christian childhood, fortunately.
Well, let's talk about your faith journey. And I totally relate as we get older and we're growing. And if we have that foundation, yes, we do need to search it out, Jesus out for ourselves to have that personal relationship with him. And so I would love for you to share your story.
Yeah, that question of like, what is your faith journey? I'm like, man, how much time do you have? It's kind of, I was raised very Christian and I had a very solid childhood, but it's been a long journey for me to really find my relationship with Christ and what that looks like. So I was baptized when I was 8, as one does whenever you're raised in a Christian home, you get baptized around that time usually. And I think that's pretty much why I did it, is because I felt like I needed to. And then as I got into my teens and I was just kind of exposed to more stuff of just life, I started to kind of fall away from that. Not, it was never a super dramatic like falling away, but just in my mind, I was just sort of distant from the Lord and things of the Lord. And I got interested in some other things that were probably not so good for me as far as spirituality and even politically. We don't have to get into that, but ideologically, all of these things that were not aligned with really who I was. But and that's a big thing for me, is who I am and who I thought I was. And eventually it got to a point where I really had no identity, and identity is such a huge thing for me, as far as like it dictates your entire life and how you operate, of knowing who you are and your purpose for being. So yeah, eventually it got to where I really had no identity, and I didn't really have anything to hold to. I didn't have I say I didn't have any kind of true north as far as what I was doing. And so when I was 20, I started really to struggle with my mind. And I know that anxiety and depression and mental health is a big conversation right now. And it was more of a struggle for me than I ever thought it would be. And I think that honestly, the enemy kind of saw that I had no identity and I had nothing to tether me to reality. And yeah, my mind just started to be filled with more lies than I could ever describe. And I think that it was more and it was deeper than anyone could have ever predicted, or I could have predicted or guessed. And I got to where I was completely exhausted and depleted, and I had nothing. Um, and it was then that the Lord really came to me and found me and completely saved me. And I was from then on completely changed. And my mind has still been a struggle, and it's still something I have to conquer daily. But
Mhm.
I realized that a lot of it came from having no identity and no clue of who I really was. And so the enemy was able to use that. And now I have a stronger identity than I've ever had in the Lord. And I know that no matter what I'm necessarily doing as far as work or life or friends or family, anything like that, all of those things, yes, all of those things have to do with who you are, but my true identity and where my sense of self comes from the Lord and what he says.
That is so good. Knowing who we are in Christ sets the pace for everything, just like you said. It directs our footsteps daily, and not being pressured by the pressures of the world or by other people or by your peers and what you think you should be, but just knowing who you are. And I think, Jade, the way to find that out, of course, is to pray, spend time with the Lord, but really to read his word, to
Yes.
know what he says about you. And I don't know about you, but I love Psalms 139 that talks about, he saw us before we were formed. He wrote out every single day of our life before it came to be. And I know when I was a new Christian, I was 26, it took me a while. I like a light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, okay. So if God has already wrote my story, all I have to do, and it's not as simple as that, all I have
Right.
to do is follow him and his lead. And then, of course, I got into the word more to see what the word,
Yes.
you're more than a conqueror through Christ Jesus. You were adopted into his family. All those things, when you start to fill yourself with the word and when you start to fill your mind with the word, you start to walk in the word and move in it. And I think people can know the word, but they don't necessarily know how to walk in it until they walk by faith. Just walk in it. So thank you so much for sharing your story. That was beautiful. And I love to hear, how God came in and opened people's hearts and said, here I am, Jade, I'm
Yeah.
right here for you. How does your faith play a role in your business, like in your everyday life as a baker?
Um, Honestly, I think that the main way that my faith plays a role is just in letting everything I do be done unto the Lord, and not only that, but be done with excellence, because I believe that that's what God calls us to, is not necessarily to be perfect within our own strength, but he does call us to do our best in all things that we do. And
Mhm.
so I think that's a big thing for me, of not being okay with um, selling things or giving things or providing things that are not up to a standard that I
Mhm.
have set for myself and
Right.
of excellence. And also just it's a big thing for me to provide people who don't have the same access to certain things to have that access. So for me, that was gluten-free things. For a long time, I was gluten-free and could never find anything. And so that was a big part of how I came to have this business, was providing access to people and trying to love people through that.
That is lovely. And that's what we're called to do. And you are using your gifts and your talents. And who knows, the road is right there in front of you. Who knows what God is going to do with what you're doing, giving your gifts and talents by baking and meeting people's needs. God will bless you in that. And he meets you right there. What if someone out of our area wanted you to bake them, let's say, a wedding cake? Would you be up for something like that?
I would do it, yes. I try to never say no. I try to say no as least as possible.
Right.
Um, However, since I am a small business, I say small business, I am me. It's only me. And so
Come to you.
I can't always deliver. I actually have several weddings on my books this year, and I think one of them is out of town and the girl is coming here to get it. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I do mainly pickups. I've done just a couple of deliveries, but I don't usually do that because I'm not able to with my time. So I try to work with each individual customer and do what we can to make it work.
Right. Well, I was just wondering if someone from out of town said, "Hey, I want a gluten-free wedding cake and I'll come and get it. Will you bake it?" Something like that. And like I
Yeah.
said, who knows what God is going to do with your business, Jade? I mean, the world's right there in front of you. So all things are possible, right? Talking about your cakes and your desserts, has baking been something that you've always loved to do? Was it something that was passed down in your family?
I actually got into baking because I'm a very aesthetically driven person. I
Mhm.
love to create and make things that are pretty. And so I actually got into baking through just wanting to learn cake decorating, just to do it for fun.
Yes.
And then, so I did my niece's birthday cake. I think that was the first cake I did. It was a Toy Story cake. And it was so fun and I loved doing that. So I tried to do as many cakes as I could, like for my family. And then when I became gluten free, I've been gluten free for about 4 years. Um, I realized there are not many options out there, and I went through, I think, 2 birthdays of not getting to have a regular birthday cake or a good birthday cake. I'm not putting down anyone's business, but gluten free is hard, okay? It's very hard. And so I was like, I'm just going to figure this out for myself. And I did. And that's how I got into it. Baking necessarily has not always been a passion of mine, but gluten free baking has become one.
All right, let's talk about gluten-free. So, all right, how would you make something gluten-free? I have no clue, Jade, how to do that. And you don't have to give us your fees or anything like that, but does it take more time to make something that's gluten-free?
It doesn't necessarily take more time once you have it figured out, but to get there, there is a lot of trial and error of figuring out just what works and what doesn't.
Hmm. I know a lot of people are really leaning towards dairy free. I know a lot of our grandchildren dairy free, that's important, and also the gluten. So, but you offer both, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. So what inspired you? Okay, you're making these great desserts for your family. People are probably hearing about it from your family members, and then you know how word spreads like that.
Mhm.
So, okay, so now you have a business called Jadey Cakes. What inspired you to start your own business and not just offer bakery goods to your own family, but branch out?
So it was actually my sister's wedding, I believe, a long time ago. I made a gluten-free cake for just honestly for myself to have there. And I knew that there was going to be a couple of people that were going to attend the wedding.
Hmm.
And so I just thought I'd make one. My mom actually asked me to make one so that I could have something there. And just a friend of ours came to me and said, "That was so good. I think you could sell those." And I don't know if he was serious or not, but the idea just kind of stirred in me for a few months. And um, yeah, I just was like, I guess I'll just try it. And that's kind of just what happened. I just wanted to try it and see. And so far it's been going. So,
Well, that's encouraging. A little bit of encouragement goes a long way. And obviously, God had that waiting for you anyway and ready for you to, move into it. But you just needed that word. And sometimes we just need a word of encouragement for someone to spark that in us, like, okay, I'm going to go in that direction. Talk about you being gluten free. Like, when did you find out you needed to be gluten free? I mean, what was there something with your health or anything that cropped up?
so part of me being gluten free was I was having a lot of health issues, gut issues, inflammation problems. And then also I was dealing a lot with my mental health, and which mental health is directly tied to the gut and also can be affected by inflammation. And so so I went and saw a doctor, and she advised me to go gluten free, and it took a little bit for it to take effect, but after so long, I could tell there was so much inflammation that had gone down in my body, and I was just feeling better. My gut was getting healthier. I am not a doctor, and I don't suggest everybody being gluten free. I've heard of people say that, and I don't know the science of everyone needing to be gluten free.
Sure.
But for me, it was very helpful, and I've actually gotten my gut to where I can handle some gluten every now and then. I will eat like sourdough bread, which or things like that, very, very sparsely. But yeah, I have gotten a lot healthier, and I am doing better on that. But yeah, that's how I got to be gluten free.
Was it difficult learning how to bake gluten free?
It wasn't necessarily difficult because there wasn't any pressure on it because I was just baking for myself.
Okay.
So it was just kind of a hobby at first, and I was just figuring out. So I think it did take me a while to figure out how to make things actually good. But it wasn't difficult or stressful because it was just for myself. So I wasn't really worried about it.
That's good. Okay, let's talk about the name of your business. Obviously taken from your name, but Jadey Cakes. Is this something you came up with or someone else thought of for you or what?
So the name Jadey Cakes started out actually as a joke between my family and my cousin.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to get into the details of the joke, but it started out as a joke. And then just as time went on, my family just called it Jadey Cakes. But this was before I was even really selling. Um, but they just started calling it Jadey Cakes. And then after I got a little like some customers and I was selling things, some families I knew just called it Jadey Cakes, and it's just kind of what happened. And then when it came time, it was this past new year, I was like, I need to really, crunch down on this and make a name and make a menu and do the whole thing. And I was like, what is my name going to be? And I really did not want to do Jadey Cakes because it had started out as a joke and I could only hear the joke in my head. And I just didn't really love it. And then everyone was already calling it that. And I really just sat and thought about it. And I was like, okay, really, from people who have never heard of me or anything, I think this name is actually kind of cute. And so I did end up using it just because a lot of my family and friends were already calling it that. So I just went with it. Most of my business is just things happening and me just going with it. So
Yeah, and that's not by accident. I mean, you may think of it as maybe a joke or this, but it's all kind of lining up, the way it should. I love it. I think it's very catchy.
I really like it now, but
Yeah,
at first it didn't feel serious to me. I think that's why I didn't want to stick with it because it didn't feel serious.
I
And
see.
then I just kind of was like, you know what? We're just gonna go with it.
Do you ever find yourself like praying while you're baking, thinking of your business as a form of ministry?
Um, Definitely. Yes. I think of everything that I do as a form of ministry. My life is ministry. And so, my biggest thing for me is worship. I'm a worship leader. I love to sing, I love music. And so, a lot of the times, my boyfriend actually made a joke about that I should make my name something to do with worship or something like that, because my thing is while my stuff is in the oven while it's baking, I go to my piano when I worship almost every time. And so, um, yeah, that's kind of that. And then a lot of the times I find myself praying over the actual cake or the actual cupcakes that I'm about to send out my door, and just trying to bless people, bless the mouths that eat this, bless the bodies that receive this. And yeah, so I definitely do think of it as a ministry.
What's your most popular items right now?
My most popular item is gluten and dairy free chocolate cake. I don't know what it is about that, but a lot of people, like even my family that aren't gluten or dairy free, they just love the gluten and dairy free chocolate cake.
Uh-huh.
But I don't understand why they wouldn't want dairy in it if they don't have to be away from it, but they love it. So that's my most popular item.
I'm wondering if if it tastes creamier or richer without that. I mean, how do you replace the dairy? Like, I mean, you've got to use something in there, right? To gel it all together because eggs kind of hold it together. I don't know anything about baking though, Jade, so you just correct me.
Well, the cake recipe isn't, it is different, but it's not all that different as far as dairy free. I think it's the buttercream that people like
Oh.
dairy free. It's just I use a different kind of butter, and I think it makes it a little bit lighter. And I mean, I make it, but it is really good. So
So order one. We always have birthdays around here with the grandkids coming over. So I'm gonna have to, and chocolate's my favorite, so I'm gonna have to try it. So, um, do you have a personal favorite that you bake or decorate, or tell us about that?
yeah, my favorite is the chocolate chip cake. It's just vanilla cake with chocolate chips in it. I'm a big chocolate chip girl. I like anything with chocolate chips. So that's my favorite cake flavor. My favorite cakes to decorate, honestly, I don't know why, but I love just doing like a classic birthday cake. I do so many interesting themed cakes and they're all fun, but I just love doing a classic birthday cake. Every time I make one, I'm taking pictures of it and I think they're so cute and I just love them.
Well, I mean, I think classic is, it just, I mean, it lasts. And there's just something about it. There's something simple about a classic looking cake. It's just very elegant. Whenever I see a wedding cake that's really simplified, I'm like, oh, that is so beautiful. So I
Yeah.
really get that. How do you balance your business, being a business owner, with your other roles and responsibilities that you have in your life? Like, what else do you do, Jade? Give me
So
responsibility.
I work part-time at right now I work part-time at an elementary school. I do the after school program and then in the fall I have a different teaching job that I've accepted that's going to be a lot more hours. Balancing my time is tricky, but I make it work. I just kind of roll with it. I have my planner and I just write everything down. And honestly, the time just comes from somewhere. I don't know where it comes from, but it just works out.
That's good. That is good. Has there been any special customer stories or orders that really touched your heart? I mean, you've been doing this since what, the first of this year or before then?
About I've been doing this about a year, but I
Okay.
just really started taking it very seriously with at the first of the year. So,
Okay.
um, the in the like best stories, let me think. I think it's just anytime someone comes to me, and a lot of people get cakes and stuff for their kids, and they're like, my kid has not been able to have anything good or anything. A lot of the time, it's things that look a certain way. Like they can find a gluten-free cake, but people don't always decorate them like themed or something like that.
Right.
But whenever people say my kid has not had a normal birthday cake in like 5 years, I'm so excited to finally have one for them. That just fills my heart because I just love being able to provide people with what they need and let them feel normal, honestly, because it can be so frustrating to not be able to eat the same way everyone else can eat, and it can be very isolating. And yeah, I just love being able to give people the opportunity to just not have to think about what they're eating and get to just enjoy it.
That's so good. Okay, let's talk about your cookies. What kind of cookies do you offer?
I offer chocolate chip and oatmeal chocolate chip and snickerdoodle. I forgot about that. The snickerdoodle are actually my favorite. I don't know how I forgot about them. But I don't get cookie orders as often, but my cookies are honestly good. I love them, but I don't think people think about it as often. But the snickerdoodle cookies are my favorite.
Well, maybe you need to. Well, I know you were at an event that I was at, or your mom was there with some of your baking products. Maybe if
Hmm.
the more you go to different events and people can try them, or you do a little sample or something like that.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna be at the Generations Women's Conference this weekend at Lewis Lane.
Okay, okay. So your products will be there, right?
They will. Yep.
Okay, so where can people find you? Like if, all right, they're listening to this interview and they're like, okay, I'm in the area and I would like to order something. How do they go about? Like, do you have a page? Do you have a phone number or what?
Yeah. You can find me on Facebook. It's just my name, Jade Hagan. I need to change it, but I just haven't. And then my phone number is 270-316-9323, and you can text or call.
Okay, so what if, there's someone out there listening and they're like, okay, I really want to start my own business, but, and they have a passion and it may not be baking, it may be something else. What would you say to them to encourage them to go ahead?
I would say that you don't have to have everything figured out to just take a step, because I mean, my business is not like big by any means. It's a very small business, and I held myself back a lot from a lot of things just in life, not just business, because I thought I had to have a whole plan and everything figured out before I just took one step, and that's really not true. You can just take one step and trust that the Lord will guide you to the next one.
That is so good. That is great advice, Jade. Thank you so much. You're a lovely guest, and I'd love to have you come back on maybe later in the year and maybe around the holidays,
Yeah,
Yeah, you're going to be busy, but thank you so much for being a guest on Shape by Faith.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening. I'm Theresa Rowe. Everyone have a blessed day. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Shape by Faith with Theresa Rowe. Remember to visit shapebyfaith.com to find out more about workouts, the TV show, podcasts, blogs, Shape by Faith products, and much more.